Hi, welcome everyone. This is Kerry Rosado. Hi, welcome everyone. This is Kerry Rosado, and welcome to the first episode of Edit. Edit symbolizes equity, diversity, and inclusion in both tech and education. And today we're going to do a panel with two mothers of children with autism, and we're going to see how they have navigated the special education system with their children. Okay, great. I'll be adding the first panelist. Her name is Jill Escher, and she is a proud mother of 3 kids, 2 of whom have nonverbal autism. She's also the president of Autism Society Bay Area. And let's go ahead and introduce her.
Hey, Kerry.
Hey.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. Can you see me?
Yeah. Hey, I had to jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, I know this whole live broadcasting with more than one person is not as easy, as straightforward as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, for sure. But I'm glad you were able to get on. So thank you.
I had to do it from my phone, so I don't know how the sound quality is going to be, but it wouldn't work for my computer. So I'll do my best.
Okay, I can hear you clearly.
Oh, good.
Cool.
Okay.
Nice. Okay, so let's get started. So could you tell me, Jill, how many kids you have, their ages, what district they're in, and what's their school setting too?
Sure. So I have 3 kids, 2 of whom have nonverbal forms of autism. And one is 20 years old. He's a boy named Johnny. And then I have a 13-year-old girl named Sophie. I live in central San Jose, and they are both in the San Jose Unified School District.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, currently they both attend a non-public school placement because they're more on the severe end of the spectrum, such that the options that were available in the schools are really not suitable for them. My daughter did spend 6 years in the public schools, a school called Carson Elementary. I think a lot of autism moms and parents in San Jose. Hi, Soph, are familiar with it. And then it became clear when it was time for her to go to middle school that there was no suitable placement. So she's now at a non-public school. And here she is right now. There she is. I've got to chase after her for a second.
So how long has she
that's where we are. And my son, who's 20, is on the verge of aging out, which is in itself a phenomenon that deserves something like 100 different episodes of your new show, because it's such a huge crisis, such a huge issue for families. Sophie still has some years ahead of her.
So are you ready then to handle, now that he's almost 22, right? At that point, that's when they graduate from the school system?
That's right. Yeah. So he's 20. So he has about 2 more years in the system before they boot him out and they say, "Out of here, guy. You're on your own."
So what plans then do you have at that point for that? Or have you
we are investigating the options right now. And for somebody who's on his end of the spectrum, the options are not great. Let's be honest. They're few and far between, and they don't tend to, sorry, I'm getting another phone. They don't tend to really address those who are more severe.
That's true.
And he's a guy who really needs one-on-one. And not only does he need one-on-one, he needs kind of a program tailored to his own needs. And that's extremely hard to find. So we could talk about that later, but that's my current crisis.
Okay, I understand. And so then what challenges have you faced since you've kind of been through it all? Now you're in adulthood dealing with your kids.
Yeah.
So what challenges did you face early on and now?
Yeah, so you know, the major challenges I've faced, I want to admit, did not have to do so much with the IEP process.
Okay.
Let me start with my son.
All
When
right.
my son was entering the school system, and this was, gosh, how many years ago? 17 years ago, whatever. It was really clear that there was nothing that the district could offer us. He was, again, too complicated, too severe. His learning was so impaired, and his behaviors were so challenging. They knew that they couldn't put him in their own classroom. So it started off a little bit contentious, but then it became like, well, we have to put him in a non-public school because there was no real choice.
Mhm.
Um, Now with my daughter, we really tried to work it out with the public schools. I mean, we tried really hard. We had her in the public schools, I said, for 6 years, and we tried our best. Both sides tried their best, the schools and us. And at the end of the day, she just couldn't progress there.
Okay.
So my challenges weren't so much, oops, you disappeared, with the IEP process. My challenges were more in the idea of what could my kids get out of school. Are you still there, Kerry? Because I'll just ramble until you come back because you've disappeared from my screen. But I'll talk to that. So again, my experience has been with the more severe end of the spectrum, and not with somebody who has academic promise. My kids are nonverbal. Their IQs are very low, even though I think they're actually pretty smart. um, and they're the kind of kids who never really had any traction with uh, academic programs, whether it was reading or writing or math or anything having to do with arts or anything. They just never had traction in any subject.
Okay.
So for me, the challenge was having kids with such severe challenges. What does school mean to them? What school means to your typical kid means academic achievement and making friends and learning social skills, and also acquisition of what you might call executive functioning type
Got
skills, where you learn kind of self-management, and you learn to achieve a certain amount of independence, right, over identifying coordinating, and achieving certain goals. My kids had none of those, right? None of the usual rules applied. So
Okay.
for me, and it's still a challenge. I'm not over this challenge yet. For me, the big challenge is, what does school mean for somebody with such a dire, and permanent impairment? What can I do now to help them achieve some level of preparedness for adulthood? And I don't have the answer to that, actually, because their progress has been incredibly slow. Um,
The school they attend, since he's an MP at school, they usually focus more on life skills. So has he acquired some life skills while attending that school, do you feel?
my kids have both made a certain amount of progress.
Okay.
Um, Definitely, Johnny's biggest challenge is his own sensory and self-management throughout the day,
Okay.
right? He is, like a lot of our kids, highly sensory averse,
Correct.
right? Like,
I get it. Yes.
what to us just sounds like noise, to him is like a hammer on the head,
Yeah.
right? Because his brain is wired that way. He can't integrate all of this cacophony of the world. It's painful for him.
Yeah.
So, part of his just making it through life is just dealing with the sights and the sounds and the feels of the world.
Not getting
Um,
distracted by everything, right?
he's being what?
Not getting distracted by everything around him.
It's not just distraction. I think he's actually physically, um, he's pained by it. He's pained, by the world. So that is, so part of his education. If it's a very unique education because it's trying to advance his ability to deal with our world, which is not a world that he's wired to operate in. So that's one thing. The other thing is in terms, and you asked about his preparedness. Well, he's still a guy who can't put on his own clothes, or when he does, he puts them on backwards. But at least he's trying.
Mine still do that, but they're 6 and 8, and your sister, yeah, I get it.
He's trying, and also, they do try to teach him some very simple pre-vocational skills, like cleaning or picking things up, right? Or putting things in a box or sorting things, right?
Okay.
Which
Basically,
to you and me might seem like preschool type activity,
yes.
but to him, it's really like the challenge of his life. Because if we could get him to, for example, pick up trash, right? Or we could get him to, hey, I see Tiffany.
Yep.
If we could get him to engage in some very simple pre-vocational skills, and self-care skills, that's a huge achievement. That means it's a lot less burden, right, on parents and caregivers, and taxpayers too, right, to care for him. So that's where we are. Okay. It's very different from somebody with a higher functioning form of autism. It's qualitatively a different world.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to visit the school that your daughter attends, because I was considering it for my own son. But after seeing the challenges the kids have there, I realized, okay, my son's a little more high functioning than that. So we decided
they're all different.
They're all in a different part of the spectrum, and so we opted for something else. So they go to a charter school in our local district. So I'd like to introduce also Tiffany, who's also on the panel. And Tiffany's also a proud mother of kids with autism as well. And she's also a founder of a local charter named Eureka, which is an inclusive school. I wanted to start off by, if you could tell us about your kids and their school setting, and
So I actually have one son who's on the spectrum, and my other son he's neurodiverse. He's got a lot of sensory challenges. He had a lot of developmental delays. Both kids have average learning abilities, so that's not an issue, but they have developmental delays and different learning challenges. So yeah, my younger son is not on the spectrum, autism spectrum. My older son is. So I have a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old. Neither have been in public schools. My older son, he was in a private school to begin, and he still didn't get the support there, and it was in Palo Alto. So for a 5-year-old going to and from San Jose.
Wow.
And then I had my younger son who had a lot of sensory issues, a lot of GI issues. So being in a car seat for basically 4 hours is too much.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we were spending over $30,000 a year for kindergarten.
Oh my God, that's insane.
Well, when we went to school, the first thing they said was, and I didn't understand the law so well. He actually got in a lottery to like a magnet art school that I thought he would love. And we went for the interview, and the principal said, no way. And I was like, okay, I guess we can't do that. So we started the special education process. And because we moved in between that time, I was in Mills at the time. I was in a master's program, and I left the master's program because it just wasn't going to work out to have
I get it.
these medical issues. And Dominic, like, what's going on? Because he wasn't diagnosed till he was 5. Because, he was like, fine, he's fine. I'm like, well, he plays a little differently. He hits these milestones a little differently. I do early intervention. This is what I'm getting my master's in. But I was kind of put off as a mom who was, her expectations were too high. And what was wrong with me, of course. I said, I'm not saying he's not fine. I'm saying there's something here that doesn't quite make sense. So I knew that he was not going to be able to go into a classroom of 28 to 30 kindergarten students because new environments were very difficult for him. Loud noises at the time, able to go to the bathroom on his own. So some of these things, and we we put him in public school,
Okay.
and that didn't work out. So for my younger son, I put him from the beginning into school,
Okay.
had language delays
All right.
and other social delays, just because he couldn't preschool because of his health issues.
Okay.
So then he got into third grade, and that environment, just because of the sensory issues, was still a little too much. So now homeschooled.
Okay.
And my older son, after we can talk about this later with the next question with navigating, but he is now in a one-on-one type private school
Okay.
called, well, I won't say the name of the school, I guess.
So is
Should
that
we?
considered an MPS school then, or is it a private
So
school?
this is a private school. It's a similar school to Fusion Academy. So it's very structured one-on-one academic instruction. And academically, he's doing
Wow.
okay. So,
Okay.
and then my younger son, like I said, is being homeschooled. And the next question, navigating, is that what we're supposed to talk about?
So now that you told us about their background, what challenges did you face then early on up until now? Because you have teenage kids now, right?
So yeah, Dominic is 13. So I kind of talked about the challenges and why they're in the school settings that they're in. I would say the biggest challenge is that with autism, it is a spectrum. People do not necessarily consider that. So while Dominic is considered high functioning based on his ability to, use spoken language and read and, academically, he's considered high functioning, right? And some other things, but sensory wise and social communication issues are still pretty challenging. Is he learning and is he growing in those areas? Certainly, but these things weren't considered in public schools, and trying to understand, what do you mean he doesn't qualify for these things? I have all these reports from Stanford saying that he does qualify for occupational therapy and things like that.
So that you were never able to achieve OT at the public school?
OT was the crux of our childhood, yes.
Wow. Okay.
we you have to function pretty low to qualify, I think 7%. And we had outside reports. There were simple things that I feel could have made public school a little easier for him, but I know we don't have a lot of time on the show. I'm happy to answer other questions.
No, that's fine. No, because I
But
went through the
he
same
went
thing.
through the whole independent evaluation, and by the time people come and go, like staff members come and go, so things
Yeah.
are delayed, and your kids don't wait. And at first grade, he was in first grade when we put him into public school, and they're saying we had to actually even fight there. He was at a private school, and
Wow.
we were offered mainstream with pull out for speech twice a week. And I said, wow, he's like falling apart in a class of 8 with 2 teachers at a school that's $35,000 a year. What's your secret sauce? Like,
Okay.
he's not going to be able to go into a class of 3rd grade and make it. So we were able to get support, and he didn't actually start in the public school until February, if that tells you anything. So we had to go in with outside help to even get him into a placement. And people always say, but you are fighting for inclusion. Well, I'm fighting for inclusive schools
Yeah.
where my son, who academically can certainly do it, but needs some other support,
Yeah.
and that's him. So
Hi.
he can't be successfully included in mainstream class if the teacher's not supported with additional like staffing. That's
Does
just
he have
not.
a one-to-one then, or was that a challenge to get?
So we didn't get one.
Okay.
He went into a smaller SDC class that was specifically for high functioning autistic students, and he did okay, but the missing component there was attention to sensory regulation issues and access to ways to demonstrate mastery that did not use a pencil to write, because he's someone who has he likes to draw, and this was one of the reasons that the OT used to deny OT services. but drawing is one of his preferred activities.
Okay.
And, well, drawing it's a complete different mechanism than actually writing.
He can't do math or write a sentence, I'm guessing.
So, so by the time we finally got the independent evaluation saying that, yes, he needs a full sensory diet, that was the end of grade. So it took us a year and a half.
Okay.
And it wasn't written into the IEP. We met beginning of 3rd grade. And during that time, both of his then teachers, who were master level teachers, great teachers, and I kept him in the program, even though he was gradually decompensating and falling apart. It was very painful to watch. My son, gosh, I hope I don't, every time I always think it's not going to trigger me.
Yeah, it's okay.
I left him in an environment going through this system, doing everything I thought I should do. I read Wright's Laws, and I think it actually kind of was more damaging, because I think what people need to understand is there's a system in place, and knowing that your son or your daughter has these rights doesn't necessarily mean that those laws are going to be interpreted similarly or implemented the way that you want them to be, and in the time that they need to. Because kids don't, development doesn't stop and wait for the IEP process. So by the time that happened, they were replaced with 2 interns who had no experience working in special education.
Oh no, that happens all the time, actually.
Yeah, and I understand there's staffing issues, but I guess the biggest issue, to just wrap it up quickly, is there's a lot of systemic issues. Public schools, and schools currently are not really set up to understand and respond to the needs of, in my opinion, most kids on the spectrum, especially if there's some sort of sensory regulation component. So if you can sit down and shut down and not be a behavior problem, you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's true. They'll pass you along. You'll be all right.
They'll pass you along. But if you have some severe behavior challenges, they may put you in an environment where managing behavior is the priority, but then academically you're not really moving forward. And for like my son, some of his preferred activities were academic driven. Like his preferred activity was to lay outside and read, because it helps regulate. So I think that the public school system has a long way to go to be able to understand kids on all areas of the spectrum, especially if you have this splintered. So I understand what Jill was saying about lower. Dominic would have been much lower into the spectrum. So maybe we need different ways of how we assess, because regulation wise and anxiety wise, he was severe enough to try to climb over fences, and then have some real mental health issues around this.
So he had elopement issues. He would run out of the classroom.
And then so the response was to contain him in a sensory room, and during that time, he would tear his clothes off, bite holes in his skin. It was really severe.
That's wow.
I mean yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's unacceptable.
I'm sorry that he had to go through it. I mean, yes. I want to make something really clear. The teachers he had, I blame them. They were doing the best they had with what they had. They weren't hurt my son or treat him badly. They were trying to protect him from hurting himself. They didn't have the support they needed there.
I agree with that. Yes, 100%.
I don't ever want to say this is a problem with teachers. This is a systemic issue, and I think we need to, there's a lot of things we looked at. I'm not going to solve it in this conversation, but it's difficult because you want to blame someone. You want a quick and easy answer, and there's not a quick and easy answer.
I agree with that. There's actually a lot of things contributing to that. Funding, training, staffing is so much. It'd be, you can't even find someone to blame because there's just so many factors contributing to that. Okay, so the final question is then, looking back at everything you've been through, what advice would you give a parent who maybe just got a recent diagnosis or is in your current situation raising, teenage or adult children on the spectrum, what advice would you give them with everything you learned throughout this whole process?
Is that,
do you
me
want to start, Jill, with that one?
Sorry, do you want me to go?
Yes, Jill.
Okay. My advice for people who are just starting out is to be practical and to be realistic.
Okay.
I think that this special education system is sort of infused with a lot of fanciful, wishful thinking about kids with autism. And I realize this runs completely contrary to like 90% of what people say about IEPs and autism. But, I'm somebody who's been through the ringer a lot, and I've seen a lot of kids go through a lot of schools and a lot of systems and a lot of different kinds of programming and a lot of wishful IEPs, and I've seen a lot of little progress made. Okay, I'm sorry that I'm just a straightforward, honest, person who annoys the hell out of everybody, but it's the way I am. So, I think that, an autism diagnosis isn't always a life sentence of being, severely mentally disabled, but it is very often a life sentence of being very severely mentally disabled. And it's very hard. No parent wants to accept that. We always, especially me, wants like the best for their kids, and we want to try as hard as we can. At a certain point, though, reality is going to kick in, and at that point, is this sort of what I started off with when I was talking earlier. What do you really want out of the education system? You really don't care if your kid can add 2 and 2, because your kid is never going to take the bus alone. Your kid is never going to go to Starbucks alone. Your kid is never going to have a job that's going to require him to count. Your kid is never going to do his taxes. Your kid is never even going to, in many cases, earn money. Who cares if he can add 2 and 2? Who cares? Throw that out the window, and instead focus on things that are meaningful for his or her daily life. And so those, oh my God, and now we have a naked guy. Hi, my naked son who's trying to pull me up. I love you too. Yes, I love you. Hey, you know what? No one wants to see you who took off your pants. I'm about to get a kiss. Thank you. I love you. Okay, that was X-rated. Sorry. Anyway,
trouble for that one. We are live.
he's outside. He went outside, so I think we're good. But basically, like, what is really going to make a difference in your kid's life? You have 21 or less than that, or 18 very precious taxpayer-funded years, right? To use, they got to say to use to help you push your child as far as he or she can go. What really matters? And I just want parents to really ask themselves at a certain point what really matters, and then work to that rather than fighting for like the best school or the best teacher or the best placement or the best IEP goals, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? What matters is how are you going to milk this to get a kid who can thrive in the world after he's booted out of school into the mean world of adult services. So take the long view, not the short view. That's my advice.
Okay.
I would say mine is similar. I think just like typically developing children, you can have kids who have a diagnosis, and one may, leave school and backpack across Europe and then start a tech. I mean, like you don't know. Kids are different. So I think that trusting a parental intuition, but also looking forward and trying to hold two realities to be consistent at once, which is, yes, we all want to believe that that there's infinite potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, definitely expect competency. Love your child. Don't think, oh, well, I'm going to stop trying to teach because this happened. But I think also you have to be cognizant of the realities that only 14% of students who are in special education right now graduate college career ready. And this is taking into account the kids who have, IEP light. So there's some real issues in education for all kids, not just kids with autism. But when you look into the adult world of autism, there's a lot of other things that aren't necessarily taken into account, like like I said, my son is academically, he's moving forward. He's not college or community ready by any means. And that concerns me because we haven't even gotten him qualified at SARC yet. So
Oh,
I'm
really?
still trying to get that. So when you talk about some issues of kids who are on the higher functioning end of the spectrum, it's difficult to even get people to recognize that, yeah, there's things they can do in very isolated situations. If, like, the temperature is right, got the right amount of sleep, and they went to there's some things. Now, will he grow up and continue to grow and grow out of those? Maybe, but I can't bank on that. So there's things that I have to do as his parent. And I definitely love that there's adults on the spectrum that are self-advocates, and I listen to them and I look to them for guidance. But I'm also aware that I have two roles. I have to show my son how to be an advocate and fight for the future I want for all humans because I believe it's the right thing. But I also have to be a parent, and I have to think about, I have to conserve him because I need to be able to control his medical needs. I need to take care of him. Does that mean that I want to take control of his life and, keep him a kid forever? No. I'm just saying there's things that parents have to do because the world isn't going to do it for us. The world's not going to take care of them. So I think, sure, have hopes for your kids and move towards that. Always remember the best part of being a parent is playing with your kids and delighting with them. So don't lose sight of that. Don't get so wrapped up in the fight of what they don't have that you lose sight of what you have right now. So have fun with your kids and don't let the world take that away from you. But be aware of what's going on in the adult world. My kids are 9 and 13, and I work with adult advocates for a reason because I want to know what's going on. What are the housing issues like? So I think you need to get out of your bubble as advocating for your child and kind of you have to be a disability rights activist because you need to fight for what they're going to need when they're adults and you're not here. So we have to be advocates for our kids and
True,
activists
true.
for the whole community. It's,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what they're doing in school. Like they might be doing great. The outcomes suck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the outcomes aren't so great even for typical children who, aren't dealing with a disability. So,
Sorry
So,
if that
but I agree with both of you. Depending on where the child is on the spectrum, whether they're more severe and nonverbal or more mild, you're going to face different challenges. And as a parent, you need to recognize what your child can do. But be aware of all your options and don't settle. I think that's, for me, my biggest takeaway from my experience with my kids. I'm still learning. They're only 6 and 8. But we've been through our challenges with our older one. And so, I totally agree. Thank you. I did want to mention one thing. Earlier, I mentioned how Tiffany is the founder for Eureka. Is there anything you want to mention? Do you have the hearing coming up this Thursday?
Welcome to San Jose Unified.
Yes.
We do have a decision hearing coming up on Thursday, and it's an uphill battle. I don't know that the school approved. There's things around that, but I will say if you want to be involved, I think that definitely connect either with Bill's organization or my organization because I think that we need more parents who are willing to get in there and write letters, go up to council meetings, county boards of supervisors, talk about the housing issues, and not just for your child's little end of the spectrum, but for all kids because it affects all of us as humans in this society. And I think I can speak for Jill also when I say this. One thing I want people to get from these conversations is we love our kids. We take our kids with us. I think our life is different. I've seen Jill out with her kids and so maybe I'll speak more for myself, but I want people to know that I can appreciate the crap side of autism and also realize that as humans, we all have something. This is mine. And I can still appreciate how lucky I am. And I love my kids and would not trade them for the world. But I do want to make sure that I can leave the world a place where they'll be safe when I'm not here. So that concerns me, but not that I have these kids.
Well said. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I want to echo what Tiffany said. I think all autism parents wear two hats. We have our that where we're the parent for our own children, but we also see that we are encountering huge social services issues, just massive deficits in terms of what's available in our public system and the growing demand for those services. So that means it's incumbent on us to speak for our children who can't speak for themselves, to make sure that the housing, the supports, the lifespan care, all those pieces, the employment piece, all of those are in place. And it's hard. We already, have our jobs. We don't want to do that. But we have to. And at Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area, we're very passionate about the adult autism crisis. We see no end to the amount of work that needs to be done. So I really do encourage families to get involved, both on behalf of their own children, but on behalf of the broader community too.
Highly agree. I admire both of you for everything that you're doing, bringing on an inclusive school, and Jill with all the research that you've been involved in, and the Autism Society. It's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so
Thanks, Kerry.
thank you. It's officially 8:07. We're 7 minutes past the time we were supposed to end. But thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your experience with your children, your families, and being so inspirational. So thank you so much. Any final thoughts or words?
Bye, Tiffany.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Bye.
good night. Bye.